Hello guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another Division 2 build video. The Battle for Brooklyn DLC is finally here, and we have a lot of new content to explore as well as some newly added gear pieces and named items to acquire. So there's more build diversity and different combinations of gear pieces, items, and weapons available for us to set up some amazing new builds. So with that being said, in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing 3 of some of the best solo DPS builds for Year 7 Season 1. These builds are extremely viable for the new Brooklyn DLC content, so you should find it a lot easier clearing these new missions on heroic difficulty. So guys, thank you so much for being here, and without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into it. Okay, so for this first setup, we're going to be harnessing the power of the ongoing Directive gear set. Ongoing Directive is extremely powerful, and I personally have loads of fun running it. And thanks to the newly added Catalyst exotic mask, this build is now a force to reckon with. So with the Catalyst mask, you're basically getting increased weapon and status effect damage per stack, as well as a decent amount of bonus armor and reload speed after killing a status affected enemy at full stacks. So that's going to help a lot with survivability, right? Having that extra bonus armor, especially with the addition of the newly added Smart Cover skill, which comes with 2 variants. So basically you get the fortified variant, which, as the name implies, provides your agent with defensive attributes, so immunity, resistance, so on and so forth, as well as the precision variant, which will grant your agent offensive attributes, so like weapon handling, increased damage, all that DPS jazz, right? So for the primary weapon, I'm running the Lexington Assault Rifle with the talent Sadist, and with Sadist, your weapon damage will get amplified to bleeding targets by 30%. So this weapon talent is going to add a very significant amount of overall weapon damage to the build because anything amplified is multiplicative, right? But for any of you who don't have this weapon, I wouldn't worry too much if I were you because you do have a lot of great alternatives. Like for one, you can go with the Carbine 7, which is super easy to farm because it's in the general loot pool, and it actually has a higher base damage than the Lexington, but with a slightly lower RPM. You can also try the Sea-Tar or even the Honey Badger, whichever you prefer, okay? But for the secondary weapon, I recommend going with whatever you prefer here as well, but I'm currently running the Carnage LMG, which comes with the talent Perfect Sadist. And as many of you guys already know, the perfect talents are enhanced. So instead of the 30% amped damage I get from the normal Sadist talent, I get 35% from Perfect Sadist, right? Now for the mask, the newly added Catalyst exotic mask, which comes with the chemical agent native talent that essentially has 3 different functions. So with Catalysis, dealing and receiving status effects will essentially be building stacks. So whether you have burn, bleed, shock, basically any kind of status effect that gets applied to you will build stacks, right? So now any enemy within 25 meters that you apply a status effect to will grant you 1 stack per second. But on the other hand, if you were to get a status effect applied to you, then you'll get 2 stacks per second instead of 1. And you will get 2% increased weapon damage, as well as status effect damage per stack, capping at 12. So at full stacks, that's basically like 24% increased weapon damage, which is really nice. And with the reactant function, eliminating a status affected enemy at full stacks will grant you 25% bonus armor, as well as 20% reload speed for 5 seconds. And lastly, with stabilizer, while you have the burn status effect on you, you can still aim down sight without any interruption. So you're basically a cleaner with this mask, because normally you're forced to hip fire when you're burning. So this mask is great to use for the new content because we'll mostly be fighting against cleaners. For the vest, an ongoing Directive vest with armor, critical hit chance, and a critical hit damage mod. Then for the holster, another piece of ongoing rolled with weapon damage and critical hit damage. And for the knee pads, a 3rd piece of ongoing Directive with armor and critical hit chance. Then the final piece of ongoing gloves, rolled with armor and critical hit damage. Last but not least, for the backpack, a Cheska bag rolled with weapon damage, both crits, and a critical hit damage mod. And Cheska also grants you an 8% critical hit chance bonus for having just 1 piece equipped. Now for the backpack talent, I went with Unstoppable Force for the additional increased weapon damage. So you will get 5% increased weapon damage per stack for every enemy that you eliminate for 15 seconds. and max stacks are capped at 5, so that's about 25% increased weapon damage at full stacks. And once you're at full stacks, each kill afterwards will reset the timer. Now you can also go with the Vigilance talent if you don't want to bother with having to build up stacks, because with Vigilance you also get a 25% increased weapon damage bonus, but you get that just from having it equipped. However, taking damage will disable it for 4 seconds. So even though you have to build stacks with Unstoppable Force, I still think it's a much better option to use, as opposed to Vigilance in my opinion. But if building stacks isn't really your cup of tea, you can go with Vigilance. For the stats, 56% critical hit chance and 115% critical hit damage on the Lexington. The critical hit damage is low, but with a 4-piece ongoing Directive gear set, you get the Rules of Engagement talent. And this talent basically allows you to apply a mark to a status affected enemy. Then, once you eliminate that marked enemy, you get hollow point ammo, which further amplifies your weapon damage by 20% while applying bleed to a target. And what's even better is that having the ongoing vest comes with the Parabellum Rounds native talent that increases the amount of amplified damage you get from 20% to 50%. So that's more than double, which is a pretty significant boost. Now for the skills, I'm currently using the Precision Smart Cover variant, which will basically enhance both your weapon damage and handling while using it. But if you'd like more survivability, then you can go with the Fortified variant, which will grant you bonus armor, resistance, and immunity to stagger effects. And for the secondary skill, I'm using the Banshee Pulse, mainly to apply that status effect, because if you take a look at the Rules of Engagement talent, you'll need to shoot at a status affected enemy in order to apply that initial mark. The Bleed Hive is another option though, but I would much rather prefer using the Banshee Pulse, because it will also serve for good crowd control on NPCs. So I went with Gunner for that matter, and Gunner also offers a 10% armor on kill bonus. And for the modifiers, I currently don't have any unlocked at the moment, so yeah. Okay guys, the next build on this list is another extremely powerful AR build, even more so than the previous. This is a simple but very viable 4-piece striker setup, similar to some setups that I've made in previous videos. And as many of you guys already know, striker is very easily the strongest gear set for a DPS in the division, so it's definitely still going to be viable for the new Brooklyn content. Now striker can be set up in so many different ways, so there isn't really a specific setup that's absolutely better than the rest, but this setup that I'll be showing you guys is one of my personal favorites because it holds up so well for heroic and legendary difficulty content. So there's a ton of raw weapon damage and survivability, which are key for a much easier experience running higher difficulty content. So I swapped in the St. Elmo's engine with this setup for the shock rounds to help with crowd control. I've normally been having a ton of fun using the Chameleon, but for the Brooklyn content, I don't know, the shock rounds from the St. Elmo just seem to help out a lot when fighting the cleaners in Brooklyn. So this is a way for me to counter their pesky purple flame. So with the St. Elmo's engine, you get the Actum S talent, which will basically give you a full mag of shock ammo once you land 100 shots on a target, and this includes enemy equipment as well. So those shock rounds will help with crowd controlling NPCs, right? However, if you would much rather prefer using the Chameleon or Strega, then these are also great alternatives. Now, for the secondary weapon, I'm using the named Rock and Roll Shotgun, which comes with the talent Perfectly Extra. This is one of the named ACS 12 shotgun variants, so there's also the Lefty if you don't have the Rock and Roll. This shotgun helps with building striker stacks super fast, but if you're not using the vest, it's optional, so go with whatever weapon you want here. However, if you have an ACS 12 shotgun or any of its named variants, it wouldn't hurt using it as a secondary weapon, right? For the mask, a striker mask rolled with armor, critical hit damage, and a critical hit damage mod. Then for the vest, a Fenris vest rolled with armor, both critical hit damage and chance, with a critical hit chance mod. Now, for having one piece of Fenris, you get 10% assault rifle damage, and I went with the talent Obliterate, which will increase your weapon damage by 1% per stack when you land critical hits. This stacks at 20, so that's 20% weapon damage at full stacks. And for the holster, a striker holster with armor and critical hit chance, then striker knee pads with again, armor, and critical hit chance. Next, for the gloves, striker gloves with armor and critical hit damage, and for the backpack, the named Liquid Engineer bag. This is a named Bellstone piece, so I get the 1% armor regen bonus, rolled with armor, armor regeneration, critical hit chance, and a critical hit damage mod. This named bag comes with the Bloodsucker talent. And with Bloodsucker, eliminating an enemy adds and refreshes a stack of 12% bonus armor for 10 seconds, maxing out at 10. So this is a really nice piece for added survivability, but a great alternative is the Memento backpack. Memento will not only add more armor regeneration, but you will be getting a nice weapon damage increase as well as some bonus armor, so it has multiple functions. The only downside with Memento is having to collect those trophies that drop when you eliminate an NPC, which may not be all too convenient for you, especially if you're pinned down in cover, right? So if you have both of these backpacks, then just go with whatever suits your playstyle better. For the stats, 57% critical hit chance and 120% critical hit damage. And for the skills, the Precision Smart Cover and Decoy. Then for the specialization, I went with Gunner for the 10% armor on kill bonus. Okay guys, so for this last setup, this is another AR build, but I'm using Heartbreaker with the Chameleon Exotic Assault Rifle, as well as the Memento Exotic Backpack. Heartbreaker is another powerful gear set for a DPS, and it actually works very similar to Striker, whereas you'll need to build Heartbreaker stacks. However, you can only build Heartbreaker stacks on pulsed enemies. And not only does Heartbreaker provide a ton of raw weapon damage, but it also provides a nice amount of bonus armor as well. So thanks to the Memento bag, running Memento with Heartbreaker helps to add some armor regeneration and more bonus armor, which increases survivability even further while still maintaining high damage. So for the primary weapon, I'm using the Chameleon, which comes with the native talent, Adaptive Instincts. And with this talent, hitting 30 headshots will grant you 20% critical hit chance and 50% critical hit damage. And landing 65 body shots grants 90% weapon damage, then landing 20 leg shots will grant 150% reload speed. Now, all of these buffs can be active at once and will last for 45 seconds. For the secondary weapon, I'm using the Rock and Roll, because unlike Striker, it can get tricky trying to build up Heartbreaker stacks, so it helps even more having an ACS 12 shotgun. Now, for the mask, a Heartbreaker mask with armor, critical hit damage, and a critical hit damage mod. Then for the vest, a Heartbreaker vest, rolled with armor, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage. And for the holster, a Fenris group holster with armor and crits. Then for the knee pads, a Heartbreaker piece with armor and critical hit chance. And for the gloves, the fourth Heartbreaker piece with armor and critical hit chance. Then for the backpack, the exotic Memento bag. Many of you guys already know how this backpack works, and it will basically provide you with both a short-term and long-term buff. So with the kill confirmed talent, as you eliminate NPCs or destroy any enemy equipment, you will get trophy drops that need to be collected. And collecting these trophies will give you the short-term buff immediately, which will scale to the number of attributes that you have equipped and will last for 10 seconds. Now, the long-term buff on the other hand will give you 1% weapon damage and skill efficiency per trophy that you collect, as well as 0.1% armor regeneration. This stacks up to 30 times, so at full stacks, you'll basically have 30% weapon damage, skill efficiency, and about 3% armor regeneration, so it's a very viable piece. So just real quick, for those who are new or returning, the Heartbreaker set works by building stacks similar to Striker. However, in order to build stacks, you will need to apply Pulse to an enemy. But you can only apply Pulse by either landing a headshot, which will last for 5 seconds, or by using a Pulse skill. So for this setup, I'm using the Banshee Pulse for this reason. The Banshee Pulse not only has a longer pulse duration of 12 seconds, but it also stuns NPCs, and 12 seconds is plenty of time to cap out Heartbreaker stacks if you're using an ACS 12 shotgun. So once I use the Banshee Pulse on an enemy, I can then use the ACS 12 to build the Heartbreaker stacks, then swap to the Chameleon and get the damage bonus, right? And for the stats, 51% critical hit chance and 105% critical hit damage on the Chameleon. This is Prajna. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Also, if anyone's interested, feel free to join the Sword Gaming Discord server. We're a growing community of Division players, so if you need help finding a group for any of the raids or incursion, or perhaps you just want to share builds with other like-minded players, then feel free to join. But you better bring some pizza. I'm just kidding. Anyway guys, a link will be in the description, so see you in there and I'll catch you in the next one. Good luck farming and keep it cool, keep it classy, peace out.